It's a city known for its vibrant culture, scenic landscapes, and love for competition. This summer, all eyes were on Rio de Janeiro as it hosted the biggest competition of all. The world's top athletes converged on the city to compete in the 2016 Olympic and Paralympic Games.
A team of student journalists from Penn State's John Curley Center for Sports Journalism traveled to the Paralympics this year to provide unprecedented coverage of the Games. They had a front row seat to some of the most intense moments and matches. This is the Centre County Report in Rio.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ryan.
And I'm Nicole Barrows. Welcome to this special edition of the Centre County Report on the 2016 Rio Paralympic Games. More than 4,300 athletes from 159 countries turned out to compete on the world's grandest stage in Brazil this summer. Almost 1,600 medals were awarded over the course of the Games in sports ranging from swimming and cycling to wheelchair basketball and five-a-side blind soccer. Our team of student journalists traveled to Brazil to provide coverage for the Associated Press. Over 10 days, we met with Paralympic officials and interviewed some of the world's greatest Paralympians. We had work published in the New York Times, Washington Post, USA Today, and more. For a country that traditionally doesn't have much Paralympic coverage, students provided a never-before-seen look at the Games to Americans. At the end of the 12 days of competition, China came out on top, taking home 239 medals. Great Britain was a distant second with 147. Ukraine, the U.S., and Australia rounded out the top 5.
One of the most famous Paralympians here in the United States is wheelchair racer Tatiana McFadden. In Rio, she added to her already impressive medal haul. After the Games, reporter Anna Petingolo went to McFadden's home in Maryland to talk to her about being the face of the U.S. Paralympic movement.
Since 2004, Tatiana McFadden has been taking the Paralympic world by storm. She proved her dominance once again in Rio this year.
It was a little bit different because, when you're starting off your very first Games when you're 15, you don't really know what to expect, and now this is my 4th summer Games, so I feel like I'm better prepared at each Games.
McFadden went into Rio with her sights set on 7 gold medals in every track event from the 100 meters to the marathon, a feat that had never been done before.
We had a relay, the 4x4. We've never had that at a Games ever before. We've had the 4x1, but never the 4x4, and also adding on the 5,000, the marathon. So that was quite different and quite challenging in itself.
She finished the Games with 6 medals, including 4 gold, more than doubling her previous career gold total. McFadden's image is all over now. She's on Coke cans and magazine covers. It's that type of notoriety that she's bringing to the U.S. Paralympic movement. She's sponsored by companies like Nike and BMW and has more sponsorships than any other U.S. Paralympian. It's something that was unheard of when she started 12 years ago.
There's been quite a bit of challenges. One is definitely sponsorship. That has grown so much since I've started. When I was in Athens and I was 15 years old, and sponsorship just wasn't there for Paralympic athletes.
But despite past challenges, McFadden is focused on moving the Paralympics forward as she continues her career.
I feel like I do have the responsibility as an elite athlete, and it's really important because we have voices and people will listen to us and really respect us. And I feel like I had to make these accomplishments in order for people to see me. But having that voice is even more important, especially trying to push the sport.
McFadden has high hopes for the future of the Paralympics, with the goal that one day maybe there won't be as much of a separation between disabled and able-bodied sports.
I really envision the Paralympics to be paralleled as the Olympics. I really hope that maybe athletes can start to compete together, that maybe the Games can be a little bit closer together, that we get a lot more coverage almost full time, just like the Olympic athletes. We really hope that we're recognized just as much as that in the future.
Now that she's back stateside and with 17 career Paralympic medals to her name, McFadden is getting used to her magnified fame.
I'm back in my hometown. So that's been really nice as people recognize you, and those are the people that have been giving me so much support over the years. It makes you feel honored because of all the hard work that's been put in over the years.
In Clarksville, I'm Anna Petingolo.
Beyond the Paralympics, McFadden is also a dominant marathoner. She's won each of the last 4 Boston, London, Chicago, and New York marathons. She's the only person to ever complete that marathon Grand Slam. Since Rio, McFadden has appeared on The Ellen Show, thrown the first pitch out at a Baltimore Orioles game, and was the Grand Marshal in the Illinois Homecoming Parade and Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
The Olympic Games brought people from all over the world to South America. While the Paralympics did as well, the majority of fans attending those events were Brazilians, who brought something unique to this international competition. I took a look at the meaning of the Brazilian spirit.
About 1/5 of the population of Rio de Janeiro is below the poverty line. So when the 2016 Olympic Games came to town, it was difficult for many local families to afford tickets. Then came the 2016 Paralympic Games. Mario Andrada, spokesman for the local organizing committee, said this about the goals for the Games. We have to generate energy, so therefore we wanted to bring the public on board and have them provide that energy, because in both games we started with an obligation to sell more tickets. And that is exactly what they did. The price of tickets for the Paralympics dropped as low as $3, with more than 2 million sold by the end of the Games.
But a lower price in tickets was not the only reason more Brazilian fans were drawn to the Paralympic Games.
I think that in reality the cost of tickets may have helped, but the motivation and overcoming of the para-athletes were definitely the main reasons that motivated and captivated Brazilians and Cariocas to come.
Carioca, a native of Rio de Janeiro, known for their warmth, friendliness, and laid-back attitude. Cariocas in attendance use this international event as an opportunity to show people across the globe just what the Carioca spirit is all about.
The Cariocas as well as the Brazilians are very welcoming. Everyone has noticed it that we have this characteristic to receive those who come from abroad, embracing everyone as a whole. And this spirit is very interesting, this unity to cheer regardless of the country or nation that is here participating. But we cheer to keep up this spirit of solidarity and cooperation, which is the meaning of the Games. At least that's how I see it.
So what exactly does this support look like inside the venues? Rafael de Melo, a volunteer who also attended the Games, described the atmosphere.
At the stage, I went to the basketball for Nigeria and Lithuania. A half of the stadium was supporting Nigeria and another half was from Lithuania. And the most people there was Brazilians. And all the Brazilian was yelling like, Litva, and supporting. So I think when Brazil was not playing, Brazilians and all the people was happy and supporting.
But with a competition as unique as the Paralympics, it's not just about cheering for other countries. Many fans believe it's also about supporting the incredible feats of the individual athletes.
I came because of what the event means. The message of overcoming their disabilities, they are life examples that we can see. Living next to them, even for a brief moment in this sporting event, I think is a life message that we take.
Athletes I spoke with after the Games described the atmosphere in the venues as incredible and said the Brazilian fans were second to none.
Sporting bright yellow shirts and khaki pants, volunteers at the Rio Games certainly weren't hard to find. Time and again throughout the history of the Games, the volunteers have been credited with the Games' success. While many felt the effects of sleep deprivation by the end of the Games, most said they wouldn't trade their experience for the world. Reporter Alison Gasparetti has more.
Bem-vindo para Brasil. If you don't speak Portuguese, that's welcome to Brazil, where countless volunteers worked tirelessly for weeks to make the Olympic and Paralympic Games a success. A majority of volunteers hailed from the host country, each of whom wanted a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and an up-close and personal view of the 2016 Games.
It's here, it's in Rio. I live here, I'm born here, and it's happening here. Every world, the entire world is watching here right now.
In the Paralympic Games, I saw a lot of competitions. And it was amazing because I think that I'm in that place and in that moment there are many people around the world seeing the same thing I'm seeing, and it's different. It's different from TV.
It's incredible to see that, to be part, and you are there. You're part of the game. So you are watching, but you are working. So it's everything at the same time.
The experience of seeing live events and other cultures wasn't the only rewarding part. According to Santos, it was the relationships that made everything worthwhile.
We make friends, we meet people. It was an amazing experience, and it's finishing.
How do they feel about the games coming to an end? It's a mixed bag of emotions.
I'm kind of tired, but just to think that it's coming to an end, it's like, it's sad, but I'm happy because when I saw the videos from the opening ceremonies, I saw and I feel like, oh my gosh, I was there, I was dancing, I was there.
Sunday we all finished all the games, and I think it was amazing, okay, amazing experience. Hope one day maybe I can feel this experience now again, but now it was awesome.
Reporting from Rio de Janeiro, I'm Allison Gasparetti.
About 15,000 volunteers donated their time to the Paralympics over the course of 11 days.
We have much more to come on this Paralympic special.
After the break, we'll talk with a competitive wheelchair racer, Brett Gravitt, about the accessibility issue in Rio throughout the Games. And later, we'll take a look at a sport you'll only see at the Paralympic level. Stick around to hear more about five-a-side soccer.
Inside the Olympic Park, there were ramps, strategically placed railings, tactile paving, and more. It was clear that experts designed the grounds for the Summer Games to be accessible to people with disabilities. But outside the venues was a different story. For those with disabilities, navigating Rio can range from inconvenient to daunting, something Brett Gravitt can attest to. My co-anchor Shannon spent a few days with him exploring just how accessible the city really was.
I can't tell if people stare at me because I'm in a wheelchair or they just think I'm like really hot. Wheelchair skills! My only experience of being in a wheelchair is in the US. I really didn't know what to expect. The first 10 meters of the sidewalk were accessible, and then we ran into this kind of like these big stone plates on the sidewalks that are like impossible for someone in a wheelchair to navigate it. So what I had to do to adapt to it was there's a little dirt path on the side that I just go around. If that dirt path wasn't there, I don't know, if there was a road right there, I physically probably wouldn't be able to get from the hotel to the bus. Downtown, especially the areas that you can tell have been there for a while, the sidewalks are made of stones, like these tiny little stones, so like just rolling on that is not very pleasant. It's kind of like bumpy. You're able to get around, but it's not like comfortable. The problem is the places that are downtown have been there for so long that that's just how it's always been. Now that they renovated that place, it shows that the mindset may be changing. It's something that's going to take time, unfortunately, but a step like that is encouraging. But if it's only changing where tourists are, then nothing's going to happen downtown where, you know, people from Brazil who spend most of their time with disabilities are. The hope is that it spreads to all of Rio.
And now I'm here with Brett Gravitt, competitive wheelchair racer and aspiring Paralympian. Brett, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So now that you're back in the U.S., what stood out to you about accessibility in Rio?
It was a lot more accessible than I thought. You know, a lot of the tourist areas are very accessible. Transportation, we didn't have any problem. The only problem we really ran into were going downtown into restaurants. Other than that, the Olympic Park, everything was very accessible. The only thing that we don't know is, like, because the Paralympics were there, you know, how much did they change just for that event? You know, once we leave, what happens? Does it stay as accessible?
So you would say in the Olympic Park it was more accessible than in the downtown area?
Oh yeah, definitely. Wherever you went in the Olympic Park, they made sure that any wheelchairs could get into every venue. You could see that even there were efforts downtown, but obviously the crowds and the transportation to get through the Olympic Park were definitely made accessible.
And now that you've been to the Paralympics, I know you're preparing for Tokyo 2020. What are some of the takeaways that you had from being in Rio?
For me, it's just, you know, seeing the professionalism of the athletes, you know, seeing the level that they have to perform at these games. I mean, that for us, this is the peak of our athletic competition. So, you know, this is the highest stage that you compete at. So to see it firsthand and to see these athletes able to compete at such a high level, it's motivating, and it's you know, puts you back to work.
And I know you competed in the New York City Marathon and also the Chicago Marathon. So what were those experiences like?
Those are tough. I mean, that's something that takes years of experience, but it's so fun to travel to these different cities and just be able to compete with these people that do it as a living, and you know, I hope to be them one day. So.
How do you plan on preparing for the Paralympics in 2020?
It's just a lot of consistent training, years. There's a lot of lead-up international events, hopefully to make the World Team USA teams to help build experience and move forward as a wheelchair racer. And
what are kind of your hopes for the Paralympic movement now that you've been a part of it?
It's, you know, it's exposure. The people that see it, you know, they love it. It's more getting it out there and letting people know that this is a real thing, and that, you know, these are elite athletes just like everyone else, and I hope it just keeps growing and expanding like it is.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
After the break, we spoke to Marie Harden, Dean of the College of Communications at Penn State, about how the Paralympic movement is growing.
Penn State College of Communications Dean Marie Harden joined us on her trip to Rio. She's also a recognized Paralympic expert. We sat down with her following the games to ask for her opinion on where the movement is heading in the United States.
I'm really excited because I think the U.S. Paralympic movement is going forward. I don't think we're going to see huge change in the next, quite frankly, decade to 2 decades. I do think we'll continue to see progress. We know that this year the Paralympics got better television coverage in the U.S. than they'd ever gotten. I think we'll continue to see some incremental change and improvement. We're not going to see the same, I think we're never going to see the same levels of television coverage for the Paralympics as for the Olympics. I think that that's probably not the right goal to have. I think what we need to do for now is continue to push for more coverage, to continue to push for more corporate sponsorship, and to continue to push for awareness. Even though we don't have many sponsors for Paralympic athletes, the number of sponsors, corporate sponsors for Paralympic athletes is increasing, and that's always a good sign. I think all of the positive attention on Tatiana McFadden is a great example of the movement going forward. And I think she's really become the face of the Paralympic movement here in the U.S. in many ways, and I think that's a good thing. Television coverage was certainly very positive and good for her. So when we have those kind of personalities that develop and get attention, that's one way to really move the movement forward. I mean, the performance of those countries is something that they see as important. I think what we can learn from them is that there's real value and excitement in the Paralympic movement that they've managed to capture in turning it into a point of national pride. And there's no reason the U.S. shouldn't also see our performance in the Paralympics as important.
Dean Harden doesn't think we'll see the same momentum at the 2018 Winter Olympics, but she's hopeful that 2020 in Japan will see continued growth.
One sport that's unique to the Paralympics is five-a-side soccer. All the players have some level of blindness and compete blindfolded, except for the goalies. Photographers Cameron Hart and Antonella Crescembeni recreated the experience for us using only still pictures.
This is football. So the first thing that we had to forget is that they are blind. The mask mainly for protection also. Every time that the ball moves, it makes a sound, and the players, as they are blind, they need to listen it. That's why we need the audience to be silent. So every time that the player moves without the ball, must say void. The goalkeepers are sighted, fully sighted ones. But if you pay attention to the pitch, there is a very small area, okay, a rectangular area, only 2 meters by 5, and that's the place where the goalkeeper must be in contact with the ball. In this zone, the goalkeeper gives orders. In the middle zone, the coach gives the orders to the players. The attack zone, the guide is the one to orientate the players. in the last 12 meters or a penalty kick, you can see that the guy hits the goalpost. And I can tell you that the best way to respect them as footballers and people that like sport is to say, you are a footballer, then you are blind.
There was no USA five-a-side team in Rio, but popularity is growing across the country, thanks to major soccer organizations incorporating the game into their programs. It's pretty incredible to watch that sport, Shannon.
Oh, it sure was. Those athletes are really absolutely incredible. And that's all for this Center County Report special in Rio. For more from this trip, you can visit our website, commedia.psu.edu, and click on the Paralympic Games tab to see all of our stories.
You can also follow the John Curley Center for Sports Journalism on Twitter at PSU Curley Center and on their Facebook page. A special thanks to Penn State University, the College of Communications, the Curley Center, and the Associated Press for making this Rio trip possible. Have a good day.